And hello, Glenavon. I'm Mistress Roz.
I'm Dame Dot, and we have with us
Master Robert.
Hey, Robert, thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we are going over Kingdom Law because Master Robert is tell us what your position is.
I am the new Kingdom Law Clerk.
Wonderful. And when did you take over this position?
Just recently, in the past, just had my first business meeting as law clerk. So start of the new year.
And
Fabulous.
What does the Kingdom Law Clerk, what do you do?
Well, Kingdom Law requires the law clerk to keep track of law changes and report those to the populace and to advise the king and the crown on the law as it develops. That's a
So
concise.
as things change, you let everybody know what is happening with it?
Correct.
Wonderful. And how have you found that? There's a big rewrite currently going on. What's the status of that?
I cannot tell you. I wish I knew. I had more information about that. I know they're working on it, but I'm not included in that process right now. I'm looking forward to seeing what they produce. They've been working pretty hard on it for the past year or so. So we'll all see it together.
Wonderful.
And there you heard it first. A very a lolly PRE kind of answer as coming soon to a publication near you. So so I've got my copy because I keep a copy with me. I usually travel with it and update it if I need to. Aha. I usually read it in the car to review before Crown Lists with Fergus. Oh, is that what you have tonight, Dot? Oh, I think you're better prepared than we are. So yeah, this is I have a binder. Sorry, the background, but I have a binder of all different things that I keep with me for stuff.
Well, I have something else that I keep with me as well. So, always be prepared.
Are those king size?
They are.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
King size.
So now that we are settled on what we have with us, let's get started. I have marked a couple of things I'm going to ask about later on, but where would you like to start, Master Robert?
Well, I thought I might just run my mouth for a minute in a very lawyerly, boring fashion. How would you feel about that?
I think that'd be great.
Okay. So, I mean, I was asked to do a short review of Kingdom Law, and I started poking around thinking about what I wanted to talk about. And I kept comparing what we have here in the SCA with what I was trained to think about as a lawyer. And so I thought, kind of comparing and contrasting those two things just as briefly as possible, and hopefully not too boring, everyone. But it may help everyone kind of understand some of my comments and some of my frustrations with the society's policies and laws and the way they're formatted.
This sounds very juicy. Here we go. Okay.
So obviously in our legal system in our country, mundanely, we have the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. And then we have federal law and then state law. Federal law preempts state law. And federal agencies have specific authority to draft rules, regulations to enforce their policies. And then there's very specific rules about how these agencies promulgate those rules, how they get them out there, and how everybody gets a chance to hear about them first, et cetera. And state laws do the same thing for state agencies. In the society, we have at the top of our food chain, our Constitution, as it were, is the organizational handbook, which contains Corpora. And that's our Constitution per se. And then after that, we have, and I'll need you, Dame Dot, I need some magical hand gestures. We have handbooks.
Oh.
What are handbooks? I don't know what a handbook is. What does it mean? What authority does it carry or not carry? How do you change a handbook? How do you not change a handbook? What if you do something that a handbook says you're not supposed to do? No, I don't know. It's a handbook. So that brings me a lot of frustration as a lawyer brain, trying to piece out sometimes what happens between all of these various documents.
Wait, we've already got our hands up. So
we have our hands up. we have questions. You go first, Dot. You might be the same
Okay.
thing I'm asking.
So at what level do these handbooks show up? Like where are these, who's creating is it shires? Is it baronies? Is it guilds? Is it?
The Corpora is the top document, right? After that,
Right.
we have society level handbooks. The Knight Marshal's handbook for the society, the Chronicles handbook for the society.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, the
So we're not talking kingdom law at this point. We're just talking random sporadic handbooks that pop up.
except that they seem to carry the weight of policy per the board. And so the board appears to be saying that these handbooks are policy and they're enforceable and we're supposed to all follow them. And most of the time we do. Except nowhere in Corpora will you find a provision that says we give the Knight Marshal, the society, the authority to create laws, policies, regulations, rules, and then go enforce those rules. There's just a handbook out there, right? And that
So-
as a queer brain, that throws me completely.
Okay.
Go
So, so Dot kind of asked what I was going to say, and honestly, the question I had just flipped right on out of my brain. So,
But she
we will come back to that in a second.
Well, okay. So is it more like, since it's not in Corpora, would it be more like, tradition, not tradition? that's
yeah.
not the-
Yeah. So like, yes, that's what I was going to ask about. So these are the way we've done it. So we've written it down and this is the way we've always done it, or this is the way we've done it for the last 10 years, 20 years or something.
Right. And then after that, becomes kingdom law in order of precedence, right? So we can write our own kingdom law. And then after that, our officers write handbooks. There are kingdom level handbooks. And none of the stuff is supposed to conflict on the way with the stuff that's above it. It's all supposed to be in kind of sync. But that's my big frustration for me. So I guess let me give you.
I want to jump in again. I need to jump in again because it sounds like you're almost in a perfect position to talk about some of this.
I hope so. People may just think, well, he's just a bit lawyer grousing, which maybe too. For instance,
But of all the people that could be grousing, let's
And
say,
that's the way that your brain works. And if you have to be responsible for knowing the law and being able to get it out there and discuss it with people,
and
that's
I
the way
think
your brain works.
And to me, I think you're bringing up some interesting topics that maybe should be discussed in not only in where we are here in Glenavon, but at a greater level. So forgive us for interrupting and asking our questions, but please keep going.
Have you found any, when you've done your research, and I know how you do your research, have you found any, I know it's not in Corpora, but have you found anywhere where, now I forgot my question, kind of like where it's known to be that these handbooks are accepted? Is it in kingdom law that it would say, hey, follow the Knights Marshal handbook? Is it anywhere in our kingdom law that it says follow these handbooks?
I don't think it is. I think it may be just assumed, that we're going to.
And I would think that are these handbooks approved? This might be another question you don't know. Are these handbooks approved by the next level up? I know you said they're not supposed to conflict, but when drafting, I could draft something.
Right.
Or are we talking about best practices here?
That's the word that I was looking for. Best practices.
As a kingdom level officer, could you draft a handbook for your office and then show it to the crown and assume, because that's what you would normally do, just as a courtesy
Right.
in the crown. I'll say that looks great, but they don't catch, and you don't catch that you have a conflict. You have something that seriously conflicts, and it'll just sit there until it becomes an issue or it doesn't, I guess.
Interesting.
So
like 2 minutes in.
There's a policy, there's a standard of thought in law, and this is Law School 101. A lower entity like a state government in reacting to a federal statute is permitted to ratchet up protection. You get a quote, you ratchet up protections, but never ratchet down. So, for an example, might be a federal agency says you can have so many parts per million of a pollutant in your drinking water. And the state says, we think that's a little lax. We'd have to have a stricter standard so they can increase protections. They can always go up, but they can never
Right.
go down. Right.
Right. That makes sense.
Exactly. So that has been worked into this legal system the society has, in that we seem to all know that we can ratchet up protections, but we know we can't ratchet them down. And if you actually dig in, I found the text of that in the Society Seneschal's handbook. Actually tries to have a conversation about ratcheting up and ratcheting down protections. They don't call it that, but that's where it's actually found. So, for instance, a kingdom could decide to make its helmets thicker, and that when the board would support that, but a kingdom could not, for instance,
Make it
decide to
thinner.
add grappling.
Right.
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 So I guess there was a provision I wanted to read to you. It's kind of interesting. I kept coming across it, and I'll see if I can pull it together while y'all see if you have a question. This is the.
I know you were concerned that this was going to be dry and boring, but honestly, I've already found it pretty interesting debate as far as
topics that you wouldn't think about. I mean, I always thought that these handbooks had to be approved by someplace, and it had to be in Corpora that it was. I understand the concept of ratcheting it up, and I think I've been a part of some of that. But so what did you find us? Did you find it?
Let me find something very interesting. This is from the Seneschal's handbook, and the Seneschal's handbook says regarding kingdom seneschals, right? The kingdom's legal representative in the SCA and has responsibility for and authority in legal matters within the kingdom. They are the interpreter/arbiter of kingdom law and kingdom seneschal policies. So I just read the kingdom seneschal is the interpreter arbiter of kingdom law and kingdom seneschal policies.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is kingdom law. This is our latest revision, 7/12/21, section I-5, interpretation. Interpretation of the kingdom laws of Glen Aubin is the duty of the crown.
Well, that's it.
Wait, which section are we in? Tell me again.
Section I-5, interpretation.
So one is saying the seneschal.
Well, I think these two things. I don't know how you jibe them. So
They can.
all is the interpreter arbiter of kingdom law. Interpretation of the kingdom laws of Glen Aubin is the duty of the crown. This prerogative is tempered by the obligation of the seneschal to advise the crown. And then it says how they go advise.
Well, that doesn't say the same thing.
So I'm putting my little sticky note to have my conversation with Fergus when we go on our next event drive. What? Look, I put a little sticky note.
We are such different people. And
for those of you out there would like to know what Dot does, please visit the Kingdom Spotify channel for Dame's Dot Broadway Sing-Along.
I'm going to add to it. I just saw Wicked. Woo, so good. Rob did too.
It
was awesome. So I'm going to add some songs from there. Okay. So that, okay.
And a question I used to get a lot when I was chronicler was, or people used to say to me, if the event isn't published in the newsletter, King and Queen can't have a court. Right? Have you heard that before?
I've heard that. Yeah.
Many times.
Yeah. Well, I've heard they can't have. I mean, they think they could have a curia or could have a court, but they couldn't bestow awards.
That's what I heard. You could have a court, but their awards wouldn't be like verified or whatever.
Right. So the provision says that unless you publish the event in the Kingdom newsletter, you're not allowed to conduct a specific list of business, and that includes changing laws, elevations, giving awards. You're not allowed to do these 4 or 5 things, and it's all official business. So of course, the King and Queen can still have a court. They're just not allowed to conduct this official business unless they advertise unless the event is advertised in the newsletter. Well, where would come from? Where would that particular bit of info come from? Well, it comes from the society chronicler's handbook. If you go dig in that, why? Yeah, exactly. The society chronicler has decided that if you don't advertise in your newsletter, the crown can't conduct official business.
Ooh.
But that wouldn't be in Corpora, which is like our constitution.
It's not in Corpora. It's in a handbook put together by the society chronicler's office, and it has been there for some time. That's a very old provision as far as I could tell. But isn't it interesting to think about why is it there? What problem are they trying to address or fix? And why is the chronicler's office the one that's publishing this particular provision? And then we're all accepting as that's the rule. That's the way it's got to be. If you don't do it this way, so anyway, there you go.
So today's class is going to bring up more questions than answers. That's what I'm finding out, Master Robert.
Well, it's if it's the game we play, and sometimes I honestly like to let's just go play what we play. And there are times that I will honestly say, like on that drive to a crown list, where I'm thinking any given Saturday,
Right.
something could happen, and
Right.
you better know this stuff.
Mhm.
So
Well, and I every time that I've entered a crown list or somebody has fought for me in a crown list, I've read it as you should, because you do need to know. But what Master Robert, and correct me if I'm overstepping kind of what you're saying, this stuff goes beyond just kingdom law. I mean, like this one thing that you brought up about it being being published in your newsletter, that's not in our kingdom law, but it's something, but you couldn't even find it if you read Corpora. So
Correct.
you would have to
Look for-
read every handbook that's out there to know what is considered best practices, and then even so, is it enforceable? And that was another question that you brought up.
Mr. Ross did mention something to me about what the qualifications were for competing in a crown list, and that's something that a lot of people maybe don't know because of the way things are set up. So Corpora only has a couple of requirements to compete in a crown list. One of them is a valid membership, and not like in Kingdom Law. In our Kingdom Law, you have to have been a member for a year. In Corpora, it is just a valid membership, and it's a membership that's valid through your reign. So theoretically, you could become a member the day before the list and still participate. You have to have a consort, and then you have to reasonably believe that you can do the job, and have access to the newsletter. And those are the only requirements in Corpora. After that, Glenaban Law has a few more requirements. That you have to have been a member for 1 year. You have to have resided in the kingdom for 1 year. And a sort of a corollary to that is that you're going to remain in the kingdom for a year. You have to have your own. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So there's actually 2 pages in our Kingdom Law that we've added on top of Corpora. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Robert. Yeah, but I had that open. I was looking at that.
But you're right. And so, and there's a provision that you have to have your own equipment, which is really strange to me. I just think, well, what was that ever an issue? Did that ever come up that you had to have your own equipment? But apparently you do. And then I guess I would point out that our Kingdom Law allows our crown to waive any of those provisions that we just talked about, not the Corpora provisions, but the Glenaban provisions, as long as they're willing to waive them for all contestants.
Right.
And hold the contestant to the fire and not all of the others. Our Glenaban Kingdom Law also requires that the contestants take the sword oath and the fealty oath prior to the tournament. And that's sort of an interesting subject for me. I'll just talk about it for a few seconds. No one can force anyone to take an oath or a fealty or a swear, a promise, anything like that. There are some people who have religious convictions or different convictions. They just don't do that. And so in Corpora, it'll tell you that if you want to take the title of a knight, you have to swear an oath of fealty. Otherwise, you become a master at arms. All right, we all know that one. But there's no other provision for forcing someone to take an oath of fealty. The only other exception being landed barons are supposed to swear fealty before taking the job. But that sort of makes sense. Like if you think that you can't take an oath of fealty to the crown, you probably shouldn't take the landed baron job. So it's not as if someone is forcing you to do this against your will. You're taking a job. So that I came across that provision, I thought that was very interesting. That's a requirement in Glenavon Kingdom law that you take an oath of fealty.
Well, but the loophole there is though that the crown can waive any of the thingies. So if I had an issue with it, I could always write the crown and saying, here's why I would not like to do this. It's a religious thing. It's a this, that, or whatever. And then they would have the ability, if they saw, that it was right and just, to take that away from their crown list. And they would have to take it away, like you said, from everybody.
Provided
right?
provided that the application is consistent to all fighters and prospective consort pairs.
Right.
Did I sound like Robert?
Yeah.
So if you showed up and said, I'm not going to do that, and the crown was for some reason some person who felt really strongly about the fealty oath, and there are some people out there who feel really strongly about the fealty oath, and they said, no, we're not going to allow you to participate if you're not willing to do this. No. And so then the bod would have to answer the question: Can we compel somebody to do this? Can we block them from from participation because they won't do this? Which brings me around kind of to our a sort of an issue that came up last year, and I won't go into the details because they're really not worth getting into. But the question is really, well, what are the crown's powers when it comes to declining to allow someone to be in their list or not? So page 33 of the crown of our kingdom law says that all participants must be acceptable to the crown, and participation in the list is by their prerogative. Period, unquote. So that appears to me to say that the crown can decline to admit anyone for any reason. But we know that cannot be the case, right? It has to be more complicated than that. So
can it? Should it? We're playing at monarchy here, aren't we?
Right. But the unwritten rule, the rule that I'm saying everybody, the unwritten rule is that the crown can decline to admit someone on an individual basis, but may not exclude an entire category of people.
Well, the bod has spoken to that, and I believe is taking additional commentary currently on that at this time.
Apparently in the past, whenever it's come up that someone has decided to exclude an entire category of people, the bod has always come down with the same answer, which is don't do that. But nobody, it's never been written down in a way that makes sense. So a few months ago, maybe last year, sometime late, there was a proposed policy provision that was going to come out, and they were just taking comments. And one of the things it did was try to address this question. But it placed upon the crown a burden to articulate a just cause. The crown had to, if it was going to exclude someone, had to do so with just cause, and that made my little lawyer brain explode. Because what does just cause mean? What does just uncause mean? I just don't know. And just cause to you, maybe not just cause to me. I wrote them back a long, lengthy letter, which I'm sure they were like, "Oh, this guy," but you needed to have very specific. If we're going to exclude someone, it needs to be for this reason, this reason, this reason, and if we're going to have to explain that reason to them, we ought to point to this reason, this reason. We ought to be able to say, "This is why I excluded you on these grounds," or we don't offer any explanation at all. Currently, Kingdom law does not have any provision in it, neither does Corpora, that requires the crown to explain why they decided to disclose and to not include someone in their list. But the law in the mundane life is very comfortable with the idea of discrimination that occurs not intentionally, but occurs anyway. Right? If you exclude an entire group of people inadvertently, you're still causing a discrimination. My concern is, what if someone uses it as a pretext? I'm not excluding all women. You know, like, no women are going to fight in my list. But I'm going to make up a plausible, nice, just cause reason for each woman that I want to exclude. I've still done the same. I've still got to the same place, right? And I shouldn't be able to do that. So,
Things
Question.
to think about.
And something else that occurs to me too is that there's no provision anywhere in Corpora or Kingdom Law about when the Crown is required to inform the participants that they won't be allowed to be in the list. I think as a courtesy, and it's always been the case that the lotters have to be in a couple of weeks before the list, and then maybe a week after that, the Crown will announce the list, and then we'll tell people if they're going to not allow them, they're going to tell them then. But there's no provision that has to be done.
Right. That would be a best practices kind of thing and I guess, you know, there has to be some thought into this. How much do you cram into one document? And I hate to say that, but as somebody not from a legal background, is that something that would be worthwhile to put into a Kingdom Law or something like that?
Well,
or, you know.
so
Well,
like, or are things left out specifically, or should they be put in, like the duties of the Crown in our Kingdom Law is fairly specific about being over the orders, doing all this, consulting the heralds, but that's not so specific for the heirs. And the document itself talks about the crown, but it doesn't talk about the heirs. So the heirs are kind of like in the wings, because they're not mentioned anywhere except that one spot until they become the Crown, and then they get all these rights and responsibilities. But so, like, to me, that was an interesting thing that I noticed reading through, that, you know, they're there. Here's the 3 points of that they get, you know, preparing for their coronation and stuff. And if the Crown gives them something to do, otherwise they're just kind of
there.
They're
right.
there.
And that we have all observed how much, you know, fundraising, private and otherwise, has to go on during an heir's reign, getting ready for a reign. It's serious business. There's a lot to do, and if that information is available, it's available in a princess handbook or something like that, some sort of guide that's out there, but not handbook, something that not something that I can necessarily put my hand on, but something that people need to know, that they've got these other responsibilities that may not be in Kingdom Law when it comes to getting money together for some of these functions. So
Right. And I would think that would be something, because there is a pretty thick section on fundraising and monies and, you know, all of that. And to me, just me, if you've read it like you're supposed to, you would know where to go. But there's other things that you're responsible for, you know, and if you're the heirs, a lot of time you do have to start prior to you stepping up, you know, like because the way that our system works out, you know, you've got to prepare for the next event that you have to raise money for, and you might be the heirs when you should have to start it. You know, that's all that I'm kind of saying. Really just kind of circled around with nothing on that one. It's a big old
the Queen stepping down is I did not know this, makes the coat for the next Queen coming around, right? And
that tradition, I've heard about that tradition off and on throughout the years. So like it disappeared for a number of years, and I think somebody picked it back up from a handbook someplace and tried to get that going again.
And there's also the sports breakfast and other things. You know, the outgoing crown is supposed to do these things for the incoming crown and vice versa, which you wouldn't know unless someone told you or you found these.
And that's the difference between the tradition and the law. You know, like, yeah, for the diamond tournament, this is supposed to be who does it, but it's not law. It's just who they've said has done it in the past, you know. So how much these handbooks, man, how much weight do they carry?
Apparently a lot, and I wish they were all collected in one place. I mean, why should they should be all kind of available in one place if they're going to be policy, if they're going to be official, something we should know about and follow if we wanted to do things right. And that's a whole nother can of worms, isn't it, Mr. Shaw?
Well, yeah, I would think that the first thing would need to be something in Kingdom Law or Corpora, depending, would be that line that says we adhere to the approved handbooks for this, that, the ones that get approval. I would think that that would have to be in the law to actually be able to back it up, but that's just me and my thinking.
I don't know, for some reason that also made me think about, unless, you entered Crown List, you're signing a document that says, well, I've read all this and I've read Corpora. Is that a legal document, Master Robert? If I'm entering Crown List and I've signed off that I've read this, I've done this.
You're certainly attesting that you did that you read all those things that you were supposed to. But does anybody actually go read Society Financial Policy or Kingdom Financial Policy? Oh yeah, who hates themselves that much that they would go read all of that? But that's something also that potential crowns need to know.
Well, and how enforceable is it? Because you can't prove that I didn't read it and then forget it because my brain is a sieve and literally cannot remember anything. I mean, put me to a mental challenge. I can prove to you.
There will be, when Dot's going to fight in Crown and she's going to have a test before.
That's right. I mean,
forget swearing guilty on the sword oath, there will be a quiz,
and it will be on Google Forms that's automatically graded. But I mean, I just don't see how. Yes, it's kind of how the society is set up on the honor system. How Crown List is fought and won, it's on the honor system. That to me is another thing that it might be written, but there's no way to enforce it or prove that said person XYZ read it or didn't read it.
Right.
Waiting in.
I do think the most recent thing though that I think that was added is the new kingdom level event system. Was that the last thing that was added to our kingdom law? Like it's a pretty big section.
Right. I'm familiar with who wrote that.
Oh, you are?
Mm-hmm.
Is it you?
Yes.
Is it you? Oh.
Yes.
So how much legalese do you have to be able to know to understand it?
I tried to make it very simple, but also very clear. Legal writing, they used to teach us there's a balance between brevity and clarity. You want to try to be as brief as possible, but you also want to be clear. You can't overdo both. But I wanted to just.
And lawyers wrote that. Lawyers said that. They do a great job at that, Rob. Sorry, I have to throw a flag on that call.
But
yeah, so
I do. It is a lot.
I don't think so. It may do some changing, but I think
you got to start someplace. I mean, you have to start someplace, and there's a critic everywhere. So there's some people that write things one way, and some people that write things another way, and that's just, But I think your point of brevity is sometimes your friend, but you also have to be clear.
I don't know, Master Robert. Those are some big paragraphs. Compared to some of the other paragraphs, those are pretty long.
All right.
Well,
But I think we have to remember how it was, when the Kingdom Seneschal would be losing their minds, beating the bushes, trying to get somebody to jump up and grab a kingdom level event, 6 weeks before it's supposed to happen, 2 months before it's supposed to happen, and nobody can get a site. And we were doing this ridiculous, where groups were putting in bids because they had to for events they didn't want, so they were putting in bids that were not usable. So the point of this kind of alphabetical rotation system, alternating between the shires and the baronies back and forth, was just supposed to give everyone as much notice as possible and give everybody a chance to participate. I think sometimes people were frustrated that 2 big events ended up kind of up in Arkansas at the same time or very close to each other in the same year. Just wait, that won't happen again for 7 years. It's.
Yeah, I think I think let me stumble over my words a little bit like it's math. I like it. I think it's a neat system. I like that my local group can look at that calendar and say, we've got 2 more years. Maybe we take this first year, we try to find something close. Let's find a new site. Let's look around. And then, I got another year to plan or something. So I like it.
And nothing in the thing that we wrote has, requires a group to do anything other than kind of be responsible. So there was a group up in Arkansas, I think, that maybe just couldn't pull it together, wasn't going to be able to have the event. And so exactly what was supposed to happen was the Kingdom Seneschal kind of took over and said, okay, now we need a group to step up and do this. When was the last time we heard that? It's been years since that used to be something that happened every quarter. If they only have to do that every 3 or 4 years to pull a group together like that, to pull an event together, then that seems to be working. But we will see. We will see what they decide.
So another section that I rather like of Kingdom Law is the preferred event section. Is that what it's called? It's on page 27. That other events of significant other events that are not necessarily Glenavon are part of Kingdom Law. Is it time for a snack? Everybody take a snack.
I was turning to page 27.
Oh, is that what you were doing?
Yeah, that's okay. I see it right there. Gotcha.
So let's see. Other events
boring with Dodden House.
Other events of significance to Glenavon may be reserved on the Kingdom calendar, and no new events within Glenavon will be scheduled opposite. I know I have personally written letters in the past. I haven't recently. That TOC and RTOC should be a part of this.
I thought it was.
Right.
TOC is not part of the preferred.
It is not. It is not. War of the Rams is one. And one event that has been removed from the online calendar that no longer exists, Meridian Reunion, is still there. So it needs to be updated. And I personally would love to see RTOC and TOC added as a preferred event, not necessarily a Kingdom event, because it's not something I think that we necessarily need every year, but just to add some leeway to it.
So I guess if we would need to have a letter writing campaign or bring it up to the Seneschal and crowns, and then that would get approved just like any other change to Kingdom Law. Is that what would happen, Rob?
Correct. I'm trying to think if there are any other that we might want to put on the official calendar. What's the event down in Mobile that seems to be a big draw every year? Everybody loves to go to Gatalog. And that's your favorite?
Yeah. But people do like the event, but I don't know if it's of the significant of them, like the former Meridian Reunion event or an because War of the Rams is technically a small inter kingdom war,
right? But
Gatalop is not. That's my reasoning on that.
I might be controversial.
Uh-oh.
Well, I like War of the Rams, but is that I guess we're trying to support it because it's between us and Onsteora. Is that the thought process to build it?
And what do they mean by event?
So, yeah.
I would like to know what they mean by events. Does that mean any SCA activities that's construed as an SCA event?
Right. And I think we were talking about conflicting events, like putting 2 events on the same weekend, how far apart they would have to be in order to not have a conflict. Right.
Oh, that also reminds me about urban legend that doesn't actually exist in Kingdom Law, is the mileage thing between events on the same weekend.
But see, did there is that a Mandela effect? Because I swear, did it come from Meridia's?
Yes.
Because I swear that used to be a thing.
It was a long time ago in Meridia's, but I'm not sure they do it anymore. I don't read their law. It's enough to read Glenavon's, but that used to be a thing many years ago in Meridia's.
I'm very old, because I swear, so that does not exist anywhere. You could have 2 groups back to back
Correct.
same state, same date.
So I don't even,
Yes,
goodness
but-
gracious, it's not in Chronicler's handbook, is it? I don't think it
No.
is.
I
That's
don't
not
think
Kingdom Law.
anywhere.
Well, it could be in Herald. I mean, the thing with these handbooks, it could be in the Herald's handbook. It could be in the Chroniclers. It could be in the Webministers. It could be in any of them.
But there's nothing about the calendar and Kingdom Law that says, you know, Iron Ox and Dragon's Will could happen to be on the same weekend. You know, I'm trying to think of
I mean,
something that's
the only provision is about kingdom level events, holding that spot, and you can't calendar against a kingdom level event, obviously.
Right. Or preferred.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have to get, even for demos and such, you're supposed to get special permission for something opposite a kingdom level event? Or is
Yes, No, I think that's in there. I think you're correct. I think that is in there actually. But the demos are probably okay, but you need to get permission. But I
From
can find it.
Seneschal, Crown,
Oh,
which one?
found it on page 26. A demo may be held with the approval of the Crown and Kingdom Seneschal opposite a kingdom level event. I didn't think that you were supposed to do that, but you had to get special permission for that.
And I could see how it come up for somebody in the opposite end of the kingdom,
Right.
and
right.
about the kingdom level scheduling. One of the things that just kept coming up for me over and over again was just the geography of our kingdom. So much of our people are in Memphis or Little Rock or New Orleans or Gulf Coast. That's just the way it is, and it doesn't. You're going to have to drive to the opposite end of the kingdom to go to an event eventually. I mean, we would all like to have all of the events be within an hour of our house, but it just doesn't work that way.
No. But
Sadly.
once again, I'm old school. I was here when Meridies and Glenavon was a principality, so driving 12 hours was kind of a thing. It's not easy now that I'm older and
I
getting the
remember.
Kroger discount for the elderly.
I
But
There's some things we don't talk about, Dot. But yes, I was there too. I was there.
way back in the day.
I've talked to Grace Connor about this. He remembers it too. It seems like we were at Glenavon. Now maybe we were still Meridies, but I want to say Kathleen was on the throne or either had just come off. So she was from Shreveport, Louisiana, and I want to say that her heir was from Savannah, Georgia, or something close to that.
We're talking that Her Excellency was Queen of Meridies.
Correct.
Yes, Countess Kathleen is Queen of Meridies. So
right. So if you think about Fort Louisiana and Savannah, freaking Georgia, and I don't know if they were exactly heirs, right, or if they were a step removed, but that's a haul. That gives you some idea how big it was back then.
absolutely. So as we come to the end of our time together, Mr. Robert, is there anything else of significance you think should be pointed out to people about Kingdom Law?
No, I can't think of any other things right this second. Other than I would love to see some changes made to all of the society's documents, starting from Corpora on down. I would like to see a kind of a revision of all of them. I wish more information was in one spot. The handbooks out there, I think it should all be one document. And I would like to see them more concise, and I'd like to see the terminology that's used become more concrete in terms of always using the same term, the same time, the same way.
Yes, more standardized.
Oh, that could be rough, getting some of the, what do they call it when they compare kingdom traditions and rules and stuff? Because I'm on some of the Laurel groups I'm on, they talk about the weird, different, even down to how the meetings run and stuff.
Oh yeah,
Right.
so different. So different from one kingdom to
Master
the
Robert, I think you've got quite the uphill battle to try to standardize some of that, but more power to you.
I do want to say something that's in Kingdom Law that everybody needs to be familiar with, and I think we're pretty good at it. The financial policy on one, if you're spending cash, it has to be for everybody. Like you can't buy a gift for the crown that comes out of your group's fund. That's one thing that's in there. So make sure it's all about money. Make sure, because money, two things that'll get you in trouble: money and breaking mundane law. But and then the other thing is fundraising. How to make sure. So there's a lot of big section in that. I don't want to get in the weeds with that, but if you're going to do a fundraiser, make sure you know what your fundraising rules are.
Ask questions for sure. See, and
Yeah.
I thought I was going to go to the page 37, the section on children. If you're a parent and you have minors, you really need to check that section out.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the other, money and kids. I was going to
How
say
about
that, but
money and minors. How about that?
And the
Mm.
pets comes right after that too, you know, responsibilities for animals. I mean, I wish more people would read the pet policy too. So
Yeah, well, there's tons, but Robert, thank you so much for bringing
you.
up all these questions. And
And
it was very informative. I had no idea. I mean, I knew the hierarchy, but I never thought about the handbooks thing. So that's kind of interesting and probably will stick in this brain for a hot minute. Or till I go to sleep tonight. And then who knows? I'll sit on the pillow. But yeah, you've got an uphill battle. Can't wait to see what you do.
All right. Thank
Good
you so
luck.
much.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Rip. And everybody out there in Glenavon, thank you for joining us. That was really good, Robert. And you were worried it was going to be dull and dry. And
Well, I think the only three people in the kingdom who are maybe interested in it were all in the conversation.